Just as the Bible tells us that Sarah was a beautiful woman, so it was with my mama, at least in my eyes. She had an inner serenity which made her moods like sunshine and shadow on a quiet lake. Mama was somber and mournful at first, but radiant with faith and hope. She had an unblemished character, piety reigned in her heart, and she maintained constant communion with the religious ordinance of her nation. Although Daddy had another wife, he loved Mama the most. He gave her richer gifts, and he loved her unfailingly. He could never understand why that didn't comfort her. Mama said she even asked him, "Am I not better than 10 sons?" But I hear her pray, Mama. She knew to call on the name of the Lord. Mama prayed day and night unto the Lord for me. She wanted deep within her soul her own son to just cuddle and play with. As the years went by, her agony grew more intense, and her barrenness was a greater burden because of the jealousy and the heartlessness of her rival, Penina. Mama held true to her name. She was a gracious woman. She conducted herself in a godly manner. Though barren, Mama still believed, and her pain found a refuge in prayer. She poured out her soul to God in the house and vowed to him, "If you will give me a son, I will give him back to you for your exclusive use." Now, Mama bargained with God. She asked God to take away the cause of her anguish. Mama told me, "You never know how people will perceive you." While she was in the temple praying, the old priest Ealy saw Mama's lips moving and her whole being caught up in the fervent supplication, and he heard her words being expressed. He thought Mama was drunk. His hasty, ill-founded conclusions added aggravation to poor Mama's heart. There she found herself trying to convince Ealy that she had not taken a strong drink. Ealy could see the sincerity of Mama's prayer, and he assured her that God heard her prayer. Ealy said to Mama, "Go in peace, and the God of Israel grant thee thy petition that thou hast asked of him." God heard her in that she feared him whom her soul loved. She kept her bargain that she had made with God. He blessed her with me, Samuel, which means asked of the Lord. She gave me back to the Lord. It cost Mama loneliness, but she kept her pledge. When she weaned me, she took me to the house of the Lord to abide forever. And you know that's a good woman, when you can give your baby back. Once a year she visited me. She made me a coat to wear. God blessed Mama with 5 more children later on, 3 sons and 2 daughters. I had her praying, Mama. She knew to call on the name of the Lord. Yes, my Mama prayed, for she carried her trial and yearning to God in prayer. She kept the faith, and God restored her health and blessed her with me. What happens when Christian women pray? You too will learn to pray. For I, Samuel, became a man of prayer. I grew up in the service of the Lord. And just as China, Sister Thelma mentioned, how they're watching us. So if you're not a praying woman, you need to pray around your children so that your children can see. I stand before you today because I am a praying mama. She will call on the name of the Lord. Now I'm going to talk to our third interviewee. I too had a praying mama. My mama came from a large family, 13 children and 2 wonderful praying parents, J. Hugh and Elizabeth Fawcett. My mama met my daddy, James Cecil Ealy, a man of prayer from a praying family. My father hailed from Kentucky, and upon moving to West Virginia, he met my mama and her family. Now from this point on, I will refer to my mama as Mud Dear, as we so fondly called her. Mother was like Sarah. She was a beautiful lady. A high-style dresser. Everything was impeccably put together. Not only in her dress, but in her home, in her teaching, and in her church. My name is Brenda. All my life, Mother told me of the close relationship these two families had, the Ealys and the Fawcett's. And not long ago, we had a family reunion, those two families together. Both fathers on the Ealy and Fawcett side were devout deacons in their church, Rose of Sharon in Berwind, West Virginia. My dear, was a strong lady of much prayer. She bore 4 sons, one of whom was stillborn, and the other 3 grew to be strong, healthy men. God also blessed her with 5 daughters. What made Mud different from Sarah and Hannah? Number 1, she wasn't barren, not with 9 children. And number 2, she didn't have a need to invite my daddy to take on another wife. My dear loved the Lord and reading his word. Boy, did she ever stay in the word. She loved reading, studying, and dissecting the word more than life itself. She conducted a speech choir, and I see one of her former students here. And she directed the Lord's Supper pageant, and many of us here participated in it. And she taught a woman's Bible class. Now, as a young woman, she wanted to be a preacher. But her father, who lovingly called her Todd, because Mother told us she was so cute, that women just aren't preachers, Todd. You just can't preach. So accepting this belief that they had in the days of her youth, she prayed for her sons to preach. Mother's sons were good-natured children. Her youngest son, your pastor, Reverend James D. Ealy, he was a good little boy. He listened and obeyed my dear a great deal of the time. The 2 others were good to her too, and they loved her very dearly also. But they had to test the waters outside the Christian home. I had a praying mom. She knew to call